Welcome back to Vanessa G Fitcast. I'm Vanessa Pozos, and here with me is Omar Pozos, my co-host and husband. And today we are talking about how to get back on track as the kids go back.
I like it.
You like that little rhyme I threw in there?
Get back on track as the kids go back. Listen, I must add too, by the way, I've gotten a lot of compliments from people that I've talked to when it comes to just questions and stuff like that. But people are liking what you're sharing on the podcast, and people are really enjoying the information. So just wanted to give you some credit there.
Wow. I mean, did we just record you giving me a compliment?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Everybody tell Vanessa how much we love her.
I'm going to cut that piece and play it back as my morning motivation.
I love it.
But no, today I wanted to cover, so many women I'm talking to, so many of our clients, even, we have moms, of course, within our coaching community as well. We have 2 mom coaches currently. And I know a lot of kids are going back to school right now, which is wild to me. I feel like summer just started. It's already wrapping up. But I know that this is a time of year where a lot of moms are really ready to kind of jump back in to their routines, back into putting themselves first, kind of maybe put some things on the back burner during summertime. And now it's time to get back to feeling good, get back to the routines that get you feeling your best.
And if we're being honest too, I think this is time where I'm not a parent yet, but I think a lot of parents are very grateful that their kids have, some couple hours to go back to school so that they can have some time for themselves. And just like you said, be able to prioritize themselves again.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely makes sense. I get it. And I think, for this episode, the things we're going to talk about are definitely not exclusive to moms by any means. This will be applicable to anybody who is maybe just in a period of your journey where you feel like, man, I just maybe have not really been giving it my all lately. Maybe you feel like you're kind of stuck in a rut. Maybe you feel like you're just a little bit, like wading through mud a little bit with your health and fitness journey, and you need that little bit of a kick in the butt, and you just need a little bit of guidance. You need a little bit of help on like how to get back on track with your health and fitness. That's what this episode is going to be for you. So let's dive in. How can we get back on track as the kids are going back to school, or as we feel that kind of shift in the year where a lot of times people are just noticing their own schedules and routines and different things shift, right? Well, I wanted to break this down into 2 kind of pieces here. So the first piece of this puzzle is going to be a question for you. And this question is, what is one tiny action you can take to create momentum? Momentum specifically, like we want to talk about just building some momentum here, because momentum is the most powerful force in the world. Think about like if you were sitting on top of a mountain and you started to push a bowling ball down the mountain, you're already making a face. Like, where are you going with this?
I'm picturing like me at the top of a mountain. And I'm like, where are we?
Why am I here with a bowling ball? Yes, but imagine you're on the top of the mountain with a bowling ball, because that's a normal thing that people do. And you push that bowling ball down the mountain, and guess what? It starts to gain momentum. And as that bowling ball picks up momentum, all the heaviness, all the weight of it, like that momentum gets just more and more powerful. At a certain point, you could not stop that bowling ball. You would be dead if you tried to stop it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the power of momentum. It's not about that first push, giving it all the power and like it kicking off with a ton of speed right off the bat as you get it rolling. It's about how it gets going and how it continues to build momentum over time. And that's what we need to do when we feel like maybe we're in a little bit of a rut. We need to build up that tiny bit of momentum. That's all it takes to get things moving forward again. So that's why we're talking about, okay, what is one tiny action that would create momentum?
Can I also highlight something really quick?
Absolutely.
You just mentioned, I like the fact that right off the bat, you're like, we're going to start with one tiny action, because and I see this happen so often, especially when women kind of dive into this, or men in general, anybody, but new routines, new schedule, you're like, screw it, I'm going to go balls to the wall. And now I have to wake up at, 5 a.m. every single day. I have to make sure that all of my dots are dotted and T's are crossed. Or
Your eyes are
eyes are dotted, T's are crossed. and I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, because week one, they're like, okay, F this, I can't keep up, or F this, I just can't do it. And then we continue to get stuck in the same cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Sahil Bloom, he talked about this in a recent newsletter of his, which if you're not sure who Sahil Bloom is, just look him up, maybe give him a follow on Instagram. He's one of those ones that I just, like if I'm narrowing down who I want to follow and who I want to see in my feed, he would definitely be one of them. But I also really enjoy his newsletter, which is really fantastic, always gives me some really great things to think about. And, he talked about in a recent newsletter about manufacturing momentum, and he talked about a specific method for manufacturing momentum, and he calls this minimum viable progress. So minimum viable progress says to just do a tiny bit as anything above 0 compounds. So we've talked about this in the past on the podcast, right? We've talked about this in relation to, James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, how that 1% difference, that 1% effect of if you can just make a 1% improvement day over day, that compounds over the course of time to where it might feel like you're doing absolutely nothing by just focusing on 1% improvements. It might not feel like enough. It might not feel big enough or, perfect enough, but your actions do not have to be huge or perfect for them to be effective in you making progress, in you getting out of a rut. James Clear said it himself too. He said, just because it's not optimal doesn't mean it's not beneficial. So we're not shooting for perfect, optimal perfection, Stepford wife, type of mom status here, where kids are going back to school and now you're just like, everything is perfect in your life and you're just going to absolutely, be that perfect Pilates mom who just does everything perfectly. No, like this is real life here. We're talking about how to actually navigate real life, real scenarios, and how to actually have sustainable long-term results that are going to be effective. So what can minimum viable progress look like? What can these tiny actions that can create momentum actually look like? One example is, let's say you're trying to get back into a workout routine, a workout habit. This one is a big one. I think a lot of women, as kids are going back to school, they're like, okay, I don't have the kids at home all day. Now I have time to maybe get some workouts in. And like, you're kind of already starting to see of like, wow, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to these classes, or I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do all these different things. And you might be, having this like grandiose idea in your head of what this can look like. But can you be a little bit more realistic in the fact that it doesn't have to be this giant step forward? I would actually encourage you to go for more of this minimum viable progress type of methodology here. And rather than saying, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour, how about we start with, I'm going to go for a 15-minute walk. How about that's your minimum viable progress? And you just focus on getting consistent with that first. And then maybe you start adding in maybe an at-home workout, or maybe you go to the gym for 15 minutes instead of an hour. Like, really start smaller than you think you need to.
Yeah. And the other perspective too, because I know people are like, Vanessa, 15 minutes, that's not nearly enough. Or 15 minutes, that's not going to do anything, right? But again, if you start small and you can do 15 minutes, then down the road, you're going to be able to do 25 minutes. You're going to be able to do 30 minutes. And then those 30 minutes become a workout, and you don't even realize it. And you're like, shoot, like I took little, I don't know, Timmy, and that's the only name that's coming to my head right now. I took little Timmy or little Susie on a walk, and you don't even realize it. You're getting a little bit of movement. But again, in a way that's easy, doable, and most importantly, sustainable, I think.
Yeah. And I hear you. If you're thinking 15-minute walk, that's not going to be enough of a difference maker for me, the only person who has the right to say that is the person who's already doing the 15-minute walks consistently.
Ooh, I like
day
that.
after day, week after week. If you're not, then that is a great starting place for you.
Yeah.
And I absolutely would encourage you, go for that 15-minute walk outside. That's going to be a huge difference maker for you. That the compounding effect of that will be huge. Another example, I think the working out is a big one that people want to kind of dive more fully into. And so that would be my recommendation there. But let's also think about, a lot of people say, okay, well, I want to get back now into like a meal prep flow. A lot of times we have during like the school year, it's easier to get into a rhythm with something like prepping our food in advance, making more home cooked meals. I don't know if this is like a universal thing or if this is just are myself and a lot of people we talk to, but I feel like I get a little looser with nutrition over the summertime. It's like, oh yeah, like let's pick up food a little bit more throughout the week. Like you kind of just get a little bit more fun with it, right? It's summertime. And now coming into the fall, you're like, all right, I really want to cook more meals. I want to have things prepped more in advance. I want to have healthier meals at home. Well, again, let's not go from 0 to 100. Let's not go from no consistent meal prep routine to now taking 4 hours on Sunday to meal prep. No, let's start small. Let's just do a little bit of prep on Sunday. Maybe that's 15 minutes of meal prep on Sunday. As you can tell, I like the 15-minute commitment here for these trends. But it could be 30 minutes. It can just be something small. We don't need to jump to a 4-hour meal prep that might not be realistic and sustainable for you. So that's where, with this first kind of step, we are going to just narrow our focus, start small, not even small, start tiny, start with a tiny action, build from there. That's what we want to do. So that's your first question for yourself is, what is one tiny action that would create momentum? That brings us to the second part of this. So now we're talking about how we're going to like get that momentum going. Well, I also like to think ahead to this next question here, which is, what is most likely going to halt my momentum? So we talked about of like getting the momentum going, but what about what slows our momentum down? What causes you specifically to lose momentum in these types of things? And so only you know the answer to this question. But I mean, past experience, in my opinion, is the greatest predictor of future experience. This is why we take a very collaborative approach in our coaching with our clients, where we don't just blindly tell them what to do. We work with them to better understand them, understand their past, and understand what's actually going to work for them and kind of pull that out of them with the right questions. So ask yourself, like, as you look back maybe on past years of the kids going back to school and kind of getting into rhythms and routines, what maybe caused you to get thrown off? What maybe caused you to lose that momentum, fall out of routines, and kind of find yourself back in a pattern of not being consistent anymore?
What do you think it is for you? Like, I'm just totally curious here to put you on the spot. Like, what do you think throws you off your path, or like what, causes you to get stuck or whatever, would you say?
I would say, like, for me specifically, I would say travel. If we have like a period of time where we have a lot of travel scheduled, I think that gets me really thrown off my routines. I do think for, what might even resonate more with some of the women listening to this episode, especially I'm specifically talking to a lot of moms with the way that we are centering this episode. And so I think a lot of moms, and from my experience of working with a lot of moms and having moms on our team, I think that a lot of times what can happen is, maybe you find yourself where it's like you're in a great routine, but then suddenly, okay, now it's getting into like sports season. And now you maybe have multiple kids in multiple sports. And now suddenly your weekends are jumping from like the baseball stadium to, the horse show to gymnastics to like all the different things. And you're suddenly like, wow, I have no extra time to do any of these other things. And this whole idea that I had about like beautifully meal prepping on the weekend, there's no time for it anymore. It could be, maybe then at that point you're like, okay, well, I had this plan of like this 4-hour-long meal prep. I did it for a couple weeks. Sports got in the way, kind of fell off that. Then, once I started stopped meal prepping, now we started to kind of pick up more convenience foods throughout the week. As I started to pick up more convenience foods, I mentally started to feel kind of bad about, what we're doing, the fact that I have fallen off this commitment I made to myself. And now I'm kind of like guilt tripping myself. And that guilt is causing me to now order the things that like sound really good in the moment, but make me feel even worse physically. And so then now I'm spiraling. Now I'm feeling even worse. Now I'm like not even exercising or going on my walks anymore because I'm just like, screw it. This is not going to work. I'm just going to start over. Now you're going in the
other direction. You're like, I'm just going to do whatever I want.
Exactly. Now that's where you find yourself. Suddenly now it's the holidays and you're like, I'm just going to wait until January to get this figured out. So I know if you're listening to this episode, that's not you. I know that you don't want to be that way. I know you want to have a true health and fitness routine that is sustainable, that's going to last through the ups and downs of the year, through the holidays, through all the things. So that's where I want you to actually take a moment from this episode and actually ask yourself to identify what are 2 to 3 potential obstacles. And as you brainstorm what these potential obstacles are, I want you to create if-then plans for not if those obstacles come up, but when those obstacles come up. So you already have a plan in place. You already know what you're going to do when you get thrown off. And that way, we don't lose momentum. That way, we keep allowing that momentum to carry us forward, even if it looks differently than how we had originally intended it to look.
I think, yeah, that if, when, or if then statement is so powerful, because I think, like, even for me, I guess you were supposed to ask me what all I struggled with so that I could share, but I'll just share it.
You're perfect. You don't struggle with anything.
That's true. So what happens when you get married to a perfect person? Oh. But anyways, to me, it's just not having a plan and thinking that I can wing it and be like, yeah, I'll figure it out. And, you know, then I wake up late one day or I oversleep and then I'm like, well, I can't cook breakfast now. So I'm going to stop at XYZ place. And that turns into, well, I didn't bring lunch, so I'm going to stop here. And then it just unravels into something that just throws me way off track. And then, like you said, next thing you know, Thanksgiving, Christmas is around, you've gone from wanting to lose 20 pounds, now you're at 30, now you're at 20, and it spirals out of control. But again, having a clear plan, and then from there being like, when shit hits the fan, because it will, then if that happens, then this is how I'm going to respond to it. If this happens, then I'm going to do this. And that's such a key point, because I think a lot of people just try to wing it, and then they end up falling off track, which just makes this so exhausting and just extremely frustrating to begin with, you know?
Yeah. Let's hope that moms don't have already dropped kids off when they're listening to this episode. They're cursing now.
Listen, at this point, I mean, I could have said something worse, but the S word, not that bad.
Don't listen to him, kids. Do not listen to him. Okay, let's do some example if-then statements here. So like we already identified maybe 2 common scenarios that can come up. So one of them being, okay, kids are enrolled in a lot of sports. Sports take over the weekend. Now I don't have time to meal prep. Well, let's create that into an example if-then statement. It's just one example. There's a million ways to go about this. You'll find what works best for you. I'm happy to brainstorm this with you if you want to shoot me a message. But go ahead, and so I would kind of write this out, and I would say, if the kids' sports take over the weekend and I don't have time to meal prep, then I would say I will order bulk proteins and bulk veggies from a meal prep service. That way, there we go. It might not be perfect meal prep, but it's something. And that doesn't, in my head, I picture this as, you know, we have a lot of meal prep services locally around us to where we can have that option to order literally a bulk thing of protein. But I want you all to even get creative with this. There are so many options to do things like this. There's a lot of grocery stores that offer that option. There's a lot of restaurants that actually offer that option. There's a lot of different ways you can go about it. So it does not mean you have to now pick up fast food or just like any, you know, convenience food that tastes good because you don't have food planned. You can plan ahead. You can get basic foods to then still put meals together with.
I mean, do you want to share some of the things we do? Like, we'll go to Publix, we'll go to Whole Foods and stuff, and then just go to their deli counter and get a couple of chicken breasts. I mean, we went to a party and we brought in like veggies that were already meal prepped, ready to go, so that we didn't have to do all the work. I know sometimes too, I've even seen like Chipotle does like catering and stuff like that, just to get like proteins and veggies and stuff like that.
There's a lot of options.
There's a ton, or even, I mean, if we're talking about like the one thing that's going to push momentum, something as simple as like just getting an Instacart order and getting it delivered to your home, so that time, by the time you come home from Timmy's, I don't know, baseball practice, the groceries are already at your door, you know, and it helps a ton, and it really does make a difference.
Now combine the two together of like Instacart, the pre-prepped, or even like rotisserie chicken from the grocery store.
Rotisserie chicken,
and there you go. You don't have to cook, but now you can like pull the chicken off, and you can, you know, maybe get, like, a lot of places do have pre-cooked veggies, or even in their frozen section, there's pre-cooked veggies that you can now throw in the oven to crisp them up. And guess what? You have a meal that looks gourmet that you barely did anything with. So we can get creative. Sometimes we just have to think outside the box a little bit. So that's one example of an if-then statement. Let's also tackle the other one I mentioned there a minute ago, which is the holiday season can throw a lot of people off. You know, that's where a lot of times we find ourselves like building momentum initially at the beginning of the school year. Kids are back to school, and then holiday parties start popping up, and suddenly you're like, this is too hard. I can't do this. I'm going to start over in January. Well, we don't do that here at Vital Spark. Our clients learn how to navigate these holidays because holidays happen every single year. So we have to know how to actually navigate them to where we can enjoy holidays and still get and maintain results. So here's one example of an if-then statement like this. If the holiday season brings more sweets into the house and I find myself binge eating sweets every night from Halloween until Christmas, Then I will pre-plan to have one sweet every night and fit it into my goals so I don't feel restricted. Very simple one. I think a lot of people would think, oh, well, what's my plan to make sure I don't eat the sweets? No, let's eat the sweets. Let's allow ourselves to have the sweets, because when you normalize it, and if you plan for it and you actually allow yourself to have the sweets throughout the holiday season, guess what? You don't find yourself overeating them. You don't binge eat them. You don't feel out of control with them. You actually can still reach your goals. We've had plenty of clients lose weight through the holidays while enjoying their sweets. We do that. Like we absolutely, I don't say no to my holiday sweets. I'm a big sweets girl. You know that. I'm like, you know that. You've been listening. Come on.
Me.
You know that. But yeah, that's just one example. So that's where I'd encourage you to identify the momentum killers and plan for them. So that's your question to walk away from this part 2 is, what is something that could halt my momentum? So that being said, keeping it very simple here. This is your strategy for kids going back to school. Keep it simple. What is a tiny action that would create momentum? And then planning ahead, what are the things that might halt momentum and how can we plan for those things? Start there. And that right there, that's all it takes. That can be your back to school fitness guide to get back into your health and fitness routines. Omar, any remaining thoughts?
No. The only thing that I was thinking is, and I think this is something that I was taught in like middle school, but it's like, what is it? The KISS acronym? Keep it simple, stupid.
We don't say stupid here though. We say,
well, that's what it stands for.
Keep it simple, sweetheart. That's the way that they say it nowadays.
Well, I was never taught that. I was always taught about the stupid thing. But in all honesty, like, you don't need anything that's like, over the world, like life changing, or you don't have to completely transform your routines or anything like that. Because at the end of the day, if you have to clear your schedule in order for something to work, it's never going to work long term, right? Yeah. So what Vanessa was saying, something very simple, like, hey, what is the one thing you can do to start momentum? And then from there, just foresee what obstacles, what things might throw you off track. That's as simple as it can be. And I'm genuinely saying this, like a 15-minute walk is much better than no walk at all. A rotisserie chicken is much better than just not planning anything at all. And that's the stuff that, it doesn't matter if you're super busy and you're traveling, like, you can always do little things like that. I mean, we're about to travel tomorrow. We already went to Trader Joe's and we bought a couple of protein bars. We brought some like chomp sticks, like turkey sticks. Again, just little things like that. We're not going to not go out to eat to dinners or anything like that, but it's little stuff like that that can make a world of difference. And again, compounding differences over time, that's where it becomes a lifestyle change. And I really think that people overthink it and they try to do way too much, which is the reason why they burn themselves out. So yeah. Boom. That's what I have to say about that.
Mic drop. Love it. Awesome. Well, I hope this was helpful for you guys. You super moms out there, you're doing great. Let us know how we can support you. We're here for you. We have tons of resources really for you all because we have a ton of moms within our community. So we've created a lot of resources to help moms, navigate some of the craziness and busyness, especially if you're a working mom. So reach out if you need anything. I'm happy to support as much as I can. But thank you so much for listening. Please share this episode with somebody else who you think could benefit from this. Spread the word. Share the good word with others who could benefit from it. And we'll be back next week.
Bye, everybody.